Welcome everyone to Creative Nature Journaling with me, Bethany. In this, our February workshop, we are going to be exploring ways of journaling the signs of spring. So it might be a bit early, but you've got the coming months to continue journaling. So we're going to have a look at some earlier signs of spring as well as a few later ones you have to look forward to. Okay, so material. Oh, there we go. I've put them in a different order to normal. Okay, so this is what we're going to look for. We're going to do some sketching of flowers and budding branches. We'll have a look at recording flowering times. And we'll do a bit something different. I'm going to have take you over to iNaturalist and have a look at how you might use that. We're going to then look at observing bird behaviour and finish off with looking at some insects and animals. So materials then. You are free to use whatever you prefer, and it can be as simple as pencil and paper. If you want to this time have some coloured paper or sort of prepared background, then that is an option. And if you have any type of white materials that you can use on top of that, here's a hint, we will be doing some white flowers. And you might want to have a quick look for something white. It can be chalk, pencil. These jelly roll pens are rather nice. If you're liking your paint more, then white designer's brush is a good one to use as well. So apart from that, any materials that you prefer, it's entirely up to you. Okay, so getting started. The very first thing we're going to do on our paper is first of all get situated with where we are. So I'm going to have a title of basically what we're doing. So we're looking at signs of spring. Feel free, if you're into your lettering, to make a nice fancy title if you prefer. Okay, today's date. What's the date? 10th of the 2nd, 25. And if you want to put the time of where you are, feel free to do that. If you want to put the weather, what is the weather today? Well, I tend to do a little symbol, and it's been pretty much this cloudy. Actually, I'm going to make that a grey cloud as well. Yeah. Bit boring, but there we go. And something that might be fun to do is to keep an eye on the pollen count as we head into spring. And that's something that I haven't done before, but it might be a fun thing to record as we go through the springtime months and see how that goes up. Okay, and we're going to be using our prompts of what do you notice, what do you wonder, and what does it remind you of? So if you are, when you're drawing, also thinking of what you're noticing and wondering, or things that what your drawing reminds me of, feel free to use words to make those descriptions next to your pictures. And we can also bring numbers into this. So sometimes I've given you measurements in the following slides if you want to use those, or things like counting how many petals. We can add all of that information, not just the drawing. Okay, let's go ahead and start. So this is our first spring flower to look at, and it's generally one of the first, if you're in the UK, that you're going to spot coming up. And so what I want to do is to start off with a continuous line drawing. So not blind contour unless you really want to do it, but just have a go at drawing with one single line as a warm-up, and you can go back over the same line as you need to. Have a look at where you're going. What shapes are you seeing? Have a bit of fun with this. And just slow down. It's been a long day. Concentrate on the shapes you're seeing. And just keep going around one line. Oops, almost went back on myself then. It's hard not to, isn't it? So when you want to go from one place to another, you can go along the same line twice. That's perfectly allowable. So have a look at the structure of the flower as you're enjoying following these shapes along. What are you seeing? Okay, how are you doing with that? It's a bit tricky doing it as a continuous line. If you end up with lines all over the place, and look, I've missed out a bit of stem there. I'm going to cheat and add it in. No such thing as cheating, really. So don't worry about the final result. This is your warm-up. This is getting to know the flower, which I haven't given you the name of. Some of you know. Okay. So last few seconds, get your last few lines in. 5, 4, 3. Oh, that's mean, isn't it? Okay, let's have a look. Next one. So this is the common snowdrop. I've given you, I've gone and written in, I've typed in the scientific names for anyone who likes those as well. So again, have a look at add in a bit of information. So we've got common snowdrop, and they are about 7 to 15 centimeters tall. So they generally flower between January and May in the wild. There are different varieties of snowdrop, so there might be some variation if you're looking at one of the other varieties or some of the cultivated versions. They are perennial and they grow from bulbs, so you will see them springing up in exactly the same places every year. And they might be thought of as a British flower, but they are not native. They were introduced somewhere around the 16th century, possibly, no one's sure, and they're now considered naturalized. So That was interesting to know because I think, oh, snowdrops, of course. But no, they are not native. And this is a nice view. If you hold one up, you looking underneath from this direction, you're going to see the structure a little bit more easily. And if I bring over my journal, mark the page. Here we go. You can see I've drawn that view in here. And so what I am noticing is that we have 3 smaller tepals inside. And tepal is the word that you use if you're not sure whether it's a petal or a sepal, because there's not a definite difference between them. So these will be tepals. And so we have 3 tepals inside, smaller, and they have green markings. And actually, they're quite green inside as well. And then we have 3 tepals on the outside, and these are pure white, and they are longer, and they have this curved in structure. So another thing that I noticed with the inner tepals is they have this kind of W shape in the middle, which I found quite interesting to have a look at. So they're not all the same thickness all the way around. That was fun to look at. Inside the snowdrop, we have these orangey yellow structures. So these are the stamen. And in the middle, there is a pistil or stigma. That's the female part of the flower right in the middle there. That's probably clearer to see on the photograph than in my drawing. But again, I've written, what does that remind me of? It made me think of snooker balls set up in a triangle. Don't know why, but it did. So if as I'm showing you these things, if it reminds you of something, it's fun to put those in and make those sort of connections with what you're seeing. Okay, so if you're drawing that view, I'll give you just a little bit longer to have a look, because it's a little bit tricky to work out what's going on, but hopefully with the drawing and the photograph, it's making a little bit more sense of this lovely structure on the flower. And of course, the scientific name Galanthus, I've written in here that Gala is Greek for milk, and anthus is means flower, so it's like milk flower. Of course, meaning the white color of them. They do have lots of names, which are quite fun to look up if you're interested in that. Another thing that you might want to take note of is that in Europe, where they are native, they are considered near threatened as a species. So that was also something that I didn't know until I started looking into it. Okay, so what we're going to have a look at next is this view. So our snowdrops tend to grow in woodland, and so this is where they really stand out when they're against sort of dark green ivy, dark brown trees, and old grass sort of leaves. So what I'm going to suggest you have a go at, and I have drawn myself a border and put in some information to start off with, is have a go at putting in a bit of a background and then go in and draw the snowdrops with some white media. So if you have some toned or coloured paper, green or brown is probably the best to use. But you can also bring in some other media as you prefer. So I'm going to, this is where you could use paint, but because it's going to take a while to dry and I want to go over with the whites nice and quickly, I'm going to use some different markers, felt tips, and brush pens, and have a go at giving a sort of loose sense of place. So I know that there's different leaf litter in browns down here. And I might imply that with a few hatched marks. Again, you can, if you want to use colored pencils and do some shading, feel free to use whatever you have on hand. And then up the back, let's start to put in some of the trees, and there's some young sort of twiggy ones and branches sort of in this corner. We've got a nice big ivy covered trunk coming in here. Again, I'm drawing it quite quickly. And if you are outside sketching, if at the moment it's pretty cold out there, so you don't want to be taking too long. So we'll just imagine that we're doing a quick sketch of this scene. So go in with the background first. What I'm going to do next is to place in the leaves. And the flower stems. That's a bit artificial green, isn't it? Try. This one's going to be probably too yellowy. It's not too bad. Have a look at the way that the different clumps grow. So each bulb has generally two leaves and the flower stem, and it has a single flower. going to use a little bit of colored pencil to imply some of the dark ivy on the trees behind. And just shading. I could go in and try to do a few sort of leaf shapes, but it's entirely up to you how much you want to put in there. And again, there's some ivy in the leaf litter trailing along, so we can fill in a bit more green. And then what I'm going to do is use white media. Now let's see, I can use some white pencil, and I'm going to do that in the background here. So again, it's just a quick representation of the flowers. And this is a photo I took on the 30th of January. So though they're out, then not all of them are completely open. There's still quite a few that are reasonably closed up. So I'm drawing basically little oval shapes, and if they are open, I'll do an overlapping oval, so it has a little triangular split at the bottom. And if it's just a bud, I'm seeing it's just one oval. In the front here, I'll start off with the pencil still. And I might want to bring in the jelly roll pen to make these stand out even more because they are in the foreground. And these foreground ones I'm also looking at maybe putting in, they've gone a bit dark in places, the little ovary at the top. So you can see the little green, almost bell shape. Okay, this is just a jelly roll pen. This is a really fun nature journaling tool, especially if you like working on toned or colored paper. And I'm just going to use it to emphasize these foreground flowers to make them show up even more. So our scene has a little bit of perspective with how bright the whites are. Okay, so hopefully you've had a little bit of fun with doing a nice quick scene and drawing the snowdrops in a few different ways. This was a fun thing that I found my photographs. Oh, do you recognize that scene? Deja vu, it was like. Um, so I took a photo last year on the 17th of February. Um, and then I took another photo this year, 30th of January. Went, oh, that scene looks familiar. Exactly the same place, exactly the same tree, same bulbs coming up again. And again, it's a fun thing with so the perennial plants, bulbs of any sort. If you've got a walk that you go round regularly, visiting it again each year and seeing when the flowers are blooming, when are they going to come up? So this was just a fun thing, and I thought I'd throw that in as another idea. And I'm very tempted to just print these photos and put them in my journal as they are. There's no problem with using photographs if that is what you have. Right, a little quick note. This is a very similar type of flower that you may confuse the snowdrops with. It's actually called snowflakes. There are 6 tepals. They are all the same length, and they all have a little green or sometimes yellow spot on them. So it's a slightly different flower, and there are different varieties. So this particular variety has multiple flowers coming from the same stem, whereas snowdrops only have a single flower on the stem. So I thought I'd just put that in there in case you're going, well, that doesn't look like what I thought it should, because they are very similar at first glance. So there we go. Now let's have a look at another one of my springtime favorites. So this is another flower that you're likely to find in the woodlands around the UK, especially sort of the southern areas. So this is our lesser celandine. It is a native flower, and it's a quite a fun one because it's really bright yellow. It stands out really well when it's open, but when it's closed, as you see in the picture down at the left corner, it has green on the outside of the petals. So if it's cloudy, it closes up and it's a little bit harder to spot. And when it's open, it's bright, bright yellow and shows up really, really well. Now, the number of petals is variable. It can have anywhere between 7 and 12 of these petals. I did count, and one of these flowers has 10, and one has 9. So it is variable. So if you when you're drawing, you end up with too many or too few, as long as it's between 7 and 12, you can get away with that. You're all happy to know that, aren't you? What I would normally say with flowers with multi-petals is to divide it into quarters and do 1 quarter and then another quarter, another quarter, another quarter. And then hopefully you end up with the right amount. The other thing that probably I should do is draw a circle around the outside so that the petals also end up about the same length away from the center. And it's interesting to notice this petal that's sort of slightly tipped over. So it's got a funny little shape going on. And just seeing that makes your drawing more unique more individual to the flower that you are seeing. Again, this one's a little bit shorter, so let's draw it not quite going up to the circle I've drawn. There we go. Okay, so having a look at the structure in the middle, this little ball in the middle, this is the female part of our flower, and it's sort of multi segments rather than a single pistil. So we can draw, I'm just going to draw lots of little bobbles onto that. Outside of it, we have stamen. And so I'm going to do some longer lines of, again, 2 little sections either side there. It is fun to notice the difference of color, just at sort of the border of where the stamens come to. There is a definite sort of shift in the yellow that you'll see, and it looks more transparent in the middle. And if you want to go ahead and draw, color in your drawing, you can absolutely go for it. As an alternative, you can make color swatches by the side of your drawings, as well as a different way of combining using color with the sketch. So if I bring my little watercolor set in here, I can think, right, what yellow am I seeing? Is it more of a mid yellow, or is it more of the lemon yellow? And I think this is probably more lemon yellow. So I could do a little color swatch next to my drawing. And then have a look at the color in that middle section. Now what happens there? It goes a little bit more transparent, but also I think if I add a little bit of the middle yellow, a little bit more water. Oops, too much. It's the problem with these brush pens. Then we can have a little swatch of that, and you can make notes. You can either draw an arrow to the part that it's mimicking, or just write the middle. And if we were including the leaves behind, and they are, again, I didn't get a good picture with just the leaf by itself, but they are an interesting shape. If you want to look them up afterwards and add that, I would recommend it because they are quite fun to draw. But then I could also go in and go, right, let's do some swatches of green. What sort of greens am I seeing? And does that need to go a bit more yellow for maybe the inside of the leaf, the stem? What kind of greens are you seeing? And adding in a little bit of color in a nice, easy, quick way that doesn't involve lots of painting. Okay. So that is our lesser celandine. And again, if you want to add any of the information on the screen, feel free. So this one is native to the UK. It's a low growing perennial with heart-shaped leaves, and it grows around about 25 centimeter high, sometimes shorter. Grows in clumps of 4 to 10 short stems, and again it flowers February to May, so keep your eyes peeled. Um, okay, so some other early flowering plants to look out for also include the early crocus. There are different varieties of crocus, so do keep that in mind if you're seeing them out and about. There may be lots of different types that you are seeing. And even the early crocus does vary in its looks quite a lot. So it can be sort of pale lilac, or it can be quite reddish purple. It can even have some sort of darker and lighter markings on it as well. This is another flower introduced rather than native, but it's absolutely everywhere. And these do sort of flower from January and February normally. So again, early spring flowers. Okay, I'm just having a look at the time. I know that we started a little bit late, but just want to make sure that we have time to go through everything. So if you are drawing these, I will give you another minute. If you haven't drawn them, you can do some color swatches to take a note of them that way. But very quickly, you have a look at the structure. One way to go about these sort of tubular shape flowers is to draw the outer tube shape first. And then if the flower is sort of slightly tipped to you so you can see the opening, to have a look at where the different petals come to. And I'm going to do a sort of dotted circle inside and then line up kind of the petals on that circle, starting with the ones that are closer to me, looking at the negative shapes, so we will see little triangles in between, and working my way towards the back. So I'm breaking down the shape from something that originally looked very complicated into something that's a bit more manageable. Just looking at those negative shapes and where the tips of each of the petals come to. And then, of course, we've got the central stamen and pistils in there. So have a little think about just getting a note of the structure. And if you want to do some little color swatches or very quick adding of color. It's a little bit tricky sometimes, the purples. I'm getting some nods, yeah. Okay, so if you are, I can see you're using colored pencil. If you're using the colored pencils, that you're a little bit limited by the colors that you have when you're trying to mix these sort of magenta type purples. You may have something called magenta, or this in the, I know you've got a polychromos. If you've got the polychromos middle purple pink, that's 125. Have a look for that one, that might help. I'm guessing you probably haven't got fuchsia, which is 123, but if you have, that might be a good one as well for this flower. There is a magenta, but it's a bit dark, and that's 133. If you haven't got a color that matches that well, try using a blue and a pink together, or it's tricky. It's a tricky color, that, because it's also light. I think it's one where if I was using my watercolors, I'd find it a little bit easier. And what I'd do is go for the permanent rose to run out of clean space for mixing. And the ultramarine blue, and then watering that down. A little bit more blue. You can get some pretty close purple mixtures. All right, let's move on from there. We're sticking with the plants, but if we have a look now, up a bit, look up into the trees, and we can spot some signs of spring happening here as well. So this is a hazel tree, and what you're going to be seeing this time of the year are these long catkins, and these are the male part of the flower, so the male flower part of the tree. And you're also going to see, possibly, they're a little bit harder to spot, the female flowers on the same tree. And I have given you a close-up view of one of those, but also if you look at the little white arrow in the photograph behind, you can see there's a teeny weeny red speckle, which is the female flower. So in showing you that gives you an idea of how small it is. And it's mostly inside of that bud. So you're only seeing the not stamen. On the word I'm after, the styles coming out. So that's the bright red bits. So let's put some numbers in here. So the length of the male catkins is somewhere between 5 and 12 centimeters, and the female flower, well, I haven't got the whole length of it, but just the styles are 1 to 3 millimeters. Teeny weeny. So I'm going to do a nice isolated red style there, and I'm going to do the flower inside the bud underneath. That was going right out here. This is the hazel, common hazel, I believe. So if you haven't noticed the female flowers on hazel trees before, don't worry about it. You haven't just been walking around not noticing things. They are very small. And the only reason you're going to possibly notice it is because of the bright color. So next time you walk past a hazel tree at this sort of time, have a close-up look and see whether you can spot any of these brightly colored female flowers. With the male catking, again, it's quite a fiddly structure. So I would try and simplify it with a bit of mark making, going down through the length, just breaking that up into slightly wobbly, scalloped shapes. And of course, we can do some labeling. So this is the male, this is the female flower. And if you don't have color media, what I should say is you can also just make notes of the color. So I'm going to call this bright. I'm going to call it permanent rose because that is the color of the paint that I would use to paint it. But if you have a different description works for you, absolutely write down whatever is going to jog your memory the best for the color that you're seeing. So I'm going to call the green here May green with red blush. Being creative now. How creative can you be with your color naming? So at this time of the year, have a look at the trees. Notice whether they do have any type of flowers appearing, and generally the catkin type structures will be appearing first. Have a look also at the buds that are appearing on trees. So the other thing to keep an eye out for is bud burst, which is, it sometimes can be the flowers that appear first, or it can be the leaves that appear first. So have a look at, first of all, are the buds sort of appearing? Are they getting bigger? Or are they actually sort of starting to turn into leaf structures? And the next photograph I have is of an elder tree, and this is showing early stage of bud burst leaves appearing from the buds. So again, have a look. What do you notice here? There's a lot going on. So again, use your words and descriptions to help work out how much you're going to put on the page. And what I might suggest, I'm going to do a little bit of a stem through here, is only draw one side at the moment, but you can take notice of the fact that they are opposite each other. And with identifying trees, whether the leaves, branches or the sprout out directly opposite like this, or whether they are asymmetrical, will be a big clue as to what species of tree you're looking at. So I can even go and put a line across and say opposite down here, make it absolutely clear. Again, it's your notes, so you can set them out however you are comfortable with. And again, when I'm drawing, I'm just going to look for the big overall shape first. So I'm going to sort of start at this beginning structure, work my way up one side. Just take a note that there's a little gap in there. How much further up is the next bit of leaf? How much further up is the next bit of leaf? So I'm looking at the shapes in between these bits of leaf. Leaflets, I should say. And thinking about the overall sort of shape that I'm seeing. Again, you can change your mind, so I'm just going to bring this one out a bit more. When you're drawing, the first line you make, it's not set in stone. You can move things about as you need to. So I'm working into that initial large shape that I made and just working my way down. Thinking, where are the darker shapes within that? It may be a bit confusing to work out exactly what's going on everywhere in this image. And if you don't know, the elder tree, it has leaflets, so there's lots of leaves in a composite kind of design. So there's a lot going on here. And where I can just see a little bit of serration on this one, I'm just going to mark that in. That's a fun thing to do. And you can, again, make a note. Serrated edge. You might want to have a play with the color again, either through making little swatches by the side or actually coloring it in or making descriptions. Another thing that I am noticing I like with this is that the branch itself has a quite distinctive texture. So I'm going to do a few little knobbly shapes on the branch. And the way that I would indicate that is through just drawing a semicircle of dark on the one side. So the light is coming from this direction. So I'm just going to draw a semicircle on the other side of that. and it gives then a indication of where the light is, as well as putting in that little texture. And again, if you're not sure, you can also add a bit of writing about the texture of the branch. What does it remind you of? What would you describe the texture as? Again, everyone's going to come up with something slightly different, so feel free to put in your own descriptions, your own words. So these are some of the early signs that you're going to see on trees at the moment. Later on, you may start to see blossom of different kinds. And again, have a look at the shapes, the structures of the flowers, the colors possibly. And that can be something fun to have a look at, and trying to identify trees from the blossom that you're seeing is also sometimes a bit of a challenge, but it can be something fun to look at. So again, for an example, is my journal. So this was last spring, and I've got pictures of some of the different blossoms, and I've tried to identify them. So, and I've got some pressed ones in here, so they're dried, and I've literally just stuck them between a piece of sellotape, and added that in, so that can work as a nice quick quick and easy method. This was an interesting one. I've identified this as a Taiwan cherry. Goodness knows what it's doing here. But it's just growing down the road from me. So yeah, obviously it's been planted there purposefully, but it's I mean, I must have walked past it practically all my life and never really thought about it. Just thought, oh, it's pretty. Okay, so it's fun if you go and look at the different types of blossoms. Some of them look very similar, and maybe a bit of a mystery as to what they are exactly, just from looking at the blossom, the flowers themselves. But it's a fun thing to have a look at. So here are again a few photographs that I've taken of different trees around my area. Up in the top left there, you can see the Taiwan cherry blossom. A little bit more of distinctive petal shape, that one. So, look for your tree blossom. What is going to blossom first? Do all the trees of the same species blossom more or less together, or some earlier, some later? Why would that be? There's lots of questions when you start noticing things that you can think about and wonder and put into your journal. The other thing is to think about how you may record the different flowering times of either the flowers or the blossoms or both that you are seeing. So you can, with your sketches, just make notes by the side of what you're seeing when, or you might want to start thinking about putting things into some kind of table or graph, or anything else you can think about. So this is what I did last year. I made a very rough and ready table And I've put the plant names across the top here. And you can see some of them I've changed and rubbed out because I misidentified it at first. Um, yeah, this happens. And then I've put the normal flowering range according to online sources. And then I've put the flowers in my garden. So when I'm noticing them first come out. And then I've put ones seen around my local area as well. So because I don't have all of these in the garden, unfortunately, but um, I've also included that. So I can also compare if I've got ones in my garden and ones in other areas, the difference between when they flower. So my daffodils are always later than everyone else's. I don't know why. Are they a different species? What's going on there? But they're always later, so I've made a note of that. So have a think about whether when you're noticing these things, whether you want to have some kind of organization that you can very quickly look at and see patterns in the flowering times. And what I have just done is I did in pencil pro, it probably doesn't really show up. But the flowering times this year of my snowflake underneath the flowering time last year, and it's a whole 4 days earlier. Wow. But yes, not much for in it's sort of 4 days, but again, you may notice patterns. If you do that, again, the more years you would build up, the more interesting it might become. But you got to start somewhere. So that is a little idea that I thought I would throw in there for you. Now, there is a website. It's also a phone app called iNaturalist, which is somewhere where you can put your observations of anything living. So it can be plants, it can be animals of all sorts. And they have a little graph in the sections about different species. And if you're looking at flowers, it will show you seasonality and it will show you when that flower is observed. So I've got on the screen at the moment just a slide to the side where I'm showing you the snowdrop, and you can see it starts off in December. It just raises up a little bit, and then we've got January, February, sort of into March is the high point, and then tapering off as we get to April. So if I can share my screen a moment, I should be able to take you over to that website. Are you seeing the snowdrops? Brilliant. Okay, so in here we have the seasonality. You can also switch this little graph to show flowers and fruiting times. So you get a little color-coded line for when the flowers are seen, when the buds are seen, etc. You can just go to leaves, and again you get green leaves, breaking leaf buds, and colour leaves. We don't have those in a snowdrop, but again, depending on what species you're looking at, that may be interesting to have a look at. So that shows you the overall observations that people are spotting. So this is the page just showing you the common snowdrop, and you also see at the top here we have information, so the near threatened status and the fact that it's introduced to the UK, and that's because I'm logged in as being in the UK, so it will show me relevant information to me as well. Something else that you can do is to look at observations are in your local area, and you can filter those. So I've just put in snowdrop, so we're getting all the species of snowdrop, and I've put Hampshire, UK, So I'm only getting observations in Hampshire. You can see mine there. And so I can go down through this and where are we going? To about, so okay, so we've only got leaves here. So we're seeing leaves appearing, it says there 2 months ago. And so I'm interested in flowers. So the first picture with flowers, first observation with flowers I'm seeing is this one, 21 days ago. So that, if it will load up, would have been, there we go, January 20th. So the first snowdrop spotted in Hampshire and put on iNaturalist was 20th of January. So again, we can use this as a tool for going into specific areas and looking at the flowering times, and you can compare that to different years. So there up the top, there is something where you can have a filter and you can put in the range, a date range. So if you just wanted last year, you can filter it by then and then look at what was the first observation with flowers last year. When was the first observation with flowers the year before that and the year before that, until you run out of observations. So it can be a good tool for going in and doing a deep dive into these different flower species and animal species as well. So I thought I would share that with you. It's quite fun. It gets a bit addictive sometimes. So yes, you can, it's good to have a little look at. Right, let's go on now to having a look at some things that move. I don't know, flowers. We do love the flowers, but okay. Early insects. Have you noticed any yet? Been a bit cold, really. But bumblebees do sometimes come out surprisingly early. And these are two of the species you're likely to see first of all. So first of all, we have the early bumblebee, hence the name early. It comes out quite early. But sometimes it is beaten as being the first by the buff-tailed bumblebee, which also appears very early sometimes. So when we're looking at bumblebees, the color and the pattern of stripes is what you want to look out for. So notice where is the yellow or slightly orangey color, and it will tell you what kind of bee you are looking at. So my in my journal, I've made this really small. It's not easy to see, is it? If I zoom in on that, there we go. So this is my early bumblebee, and we're looking for the queen. They will come out first. We've got black head, yellow stripe, black for the rest of the thorax. Then we've got a yellow stripe, black again, and then a red bottom. For the buff-tailed bumblebee, again, for the queen, black head, then yellow, then black, then yellow, and then the buff color. So it's quite often described as being like a tea stain before it goes a bit more white. Can you see that? So it's sort of brownish buff and then goes a little bit lighter. So have a look at that when you are drawing. Let's, whoops, and back here. Okay, so you can just choose to draw one of the bees if you prefer. I'm going to go for my buff-tailed because I tend to see more of those in my garden. So I'm first of all starting with the thorax and head shape. The head on this one is not very distinguishable really from the the thorax, and it's also quite buried into that chive flower. So I'm going to kind of guess where that's going in. And then I'm going to do a line coming down at the back of that. And the abdomen attaches at the bottom of the thorax, not at the top. So there's this gap. And then I'm going to have the abdomen bending around a little bit. And it's not very sharp at the bottom of that. It's a fluffy bee. So again, I'm just going to come in with some little dashes around the edge to make it look a teeny bit fluffy. Let's put some curved lines where the changes of color appear. And if you curve the line, it's going to make your bee look more three-dimensional. So don't draw a straight stripe, draw a curve. The wing, I'm going to do the front edge of the wing first, and then the back edge, and then come across in here. And then I'm going to do the second wing, again as a little shape tucked in behind. That second wing on the photo is a little bit hard to see, and they are pretty much see-through. And then have a look at the other side. So we've got the front edge, back edge, and then the second wing tucked in. And the way you can tell whether you're looking at a bee or a fly, so bees have the two wings each side, so 4 overall. Flies only have 2, 1 on each side. So when you come to either shade in or add color however you like, one thing you can do is when you come to the wings, change the color or the tone that you're using a little bit. So I'm going to go dark where there is no wing, and then I'm going to go a little bit lighter where I come to the wing. So it gives me a little bit of that sort of see-through idea. There's something there that is reflecting light. And if there is an obvious sort of highlight or lit up area on the wing, you can either reserve that as white paper or come across with some sort of white media. Again, the jelly roll pens are lovely for that. And add that in. I haven't finished off these legs, so I started one leg in here. Going to have another again with this photograph. I can't see all the legs either. So there is one in here, sort of thinking inside the flower again. So we haven't got as many legs to draw, which is sometimes a helpful thing. They do get a bit fiddly. And again, I won't do too much with the wings, but I'm just going to indicate a few of the little veins that segment it. Just a couple of lines, and then we can bring in a teeny bit of color. So slightly browny buff color going into the more white section. And I'm going to start off with yellow into these sections, and then put a little bit of a more orangey yellow over the top of that. And again, I'm just going to try and put a few dashes in to make it look a bit fluffy, leaving it a bit paler where the wing is over the top. And there we have our buff-tailed bumblebee. Okay, other insects that you might notice quite early on. So one of the first butterflies that tends to appear in the spring is the peacock. So the peacock butterfly hibernates over the winter as an adult. It can hibernate in buildings, in trees. They may be in your shed. So it therefore does appear reasonably early. The other one I would look out for is the brimstone, which is a bright yellow butterfly that again also hibernates as an adult and appears very early. And in fact, I've made a note in last year's February page that the first butterfly I saw that year was the brimstone. There it is. And therefore have a little look for those butterflies. Which one is going to be first this year? There's another picture of the brimstone, so you can see it's kind of camouflaged as a leaf. It's a funny little butterfly. Well, actually quite a big butterfly. As they go. And the peacock butterfly, again, the pattern on the wing kind of resembles a peacock's feathers, sort of the eye circle. So that's how it gets its name. One little thing that you can do when you're drawing butterflies is, if you are running out of time, just draw one side because they are symmetrical. And another little tip is that some butterflies, they have slightly different markings depending on whether they are male or female. So you can do a little division up the at the middle and have a female wing on one side and a male wing on the other, as long as you label them so you know what you've done. Then that's another way of saving time. Okay, so again, I'm just looking at the time is running away from us, and there's still quite a bit I wanted to get through. So, um, are you drawing this butterfly? I can see you are. No. Again, what I would you have the recording, so if you want to come back to any of these and do a little bit more drawing, you can come back to it at a later point, pause the recording, have a look, or use the slides that I have given you as well. Okay, so other things to look for. We won't pause and draw these because I want to get on to the next section. But ladybirds may also be quite early coming out of hibernation, depending on where you find them. So I quite often find at least one somewhere in the house that has made its way in and spent the winter hiding away and then wakes up and goes wandering. They will hibernate inside in sheds, and in this case there was lots, about 20, hidden in the bark of this tree near the base of the tree. So have a look for them because they do like hibernating together. These are the harlequin type ladybirds, and there are lots of different types of harlequin ladybird. So I've given you actually the identified by our naturalist name underneath, but I'm not going to try and pronounce it. And there we go. Here is our 7 spot ladybird as well. So if you want to, again, pause this, have a go at drawing from the slides, feel free to do so. This is, well, these are 2 little ladybirds I found in my garden last year. So there you go. You know where they're from. They are really fun little characters to watch. Right, let's get to this slide now. Can you hear birdsong? So the first thing you might start noticing with the birds in springtime is that they start singing again, or singing more, or singing louder. So have you noticed some birdsong yet? If you haven't heard, the 5th of May is Dawn Chorus Day. The one day of the year I get up earlier, earlier than the sun, and listen to birdsong. It's a good thing to do. To take it just time to listen. So other things you might be noticing with our birds is the birds that have spent winter here may start to leave. So you'll see less of them. You might see them flying over, depending on where you are. And the birds that spend the summer here will start to arrive. You might also see courtship behaviour with birds pairing up. We have a look at some of my garden birds, what they get up to. No. And we will also probably notice different species of bird doing different courtship type behaviors. So some birds feed each other. Other birds will do some mutual preening. You might notice display flights of different types. Some birds will bow to each other or have some kind of dance almost that they do. Other birds will give each other gifts. And of course, there is song to attract each other as well. You might also see territorial displays and fights between birds as they establish their territories. Then, oh, I've also made a note of woodpeckers drumming. Have you heard any yet? So rather than song, you might hear drumming, um, which it performs the same sort of a purpose. Then later on, we're going to notice nest building, birds looking at prospective nest sites, collecting nesting materials. So quite often you'll see a bird with something in its mouth that obviously it's taking somewhere to build a nest. And then collecting food for young later on as well. So let's have a little look at the common wood pigeon. Not the most interesting bird, perhaps you think, but have you noticed their courtship? So here we go. This is a little bit of mutual preening between two wood pigeons. So I haven't got the whole of the courtship behavior that they exhibit, but quite often you will see the male bowing with its tail feathers fanned out. And then it will do sort of 3 little hops and it will bow again. And quite often the female's looking at it going, "What on earth are you doing?" Or at least that's the impression that I get. But he will carry on. He will bow and do his 3 little hops, and he will bow and do his 3 little hops. And the next sort of stage is this sort of mutual preening, and then the male will feed the female. And it sounds a bit disgusting, but basically he regurgitates seed or whatever he's been feeding on into her mouth, into her beak. um, and she goes, "Oh, you're all right. You're going to provide if we make a nest together." So that is some of the behavior that you will sort of notice, and at some point you will see the feeding in this little video clip. So when you're noticing these kind of behaviors, you can just make very quick sketches of what's going on. You could also try doing a kind of comic book type approach to this happened and then this happened and then this happened. And again, if you're drawing, you don't feel that confident, and you want to explain what's going on a little bit more, you can always go back to using words. There's no problem with writing the story out. So I might do a little quick sketch, more or less, of the two of them there. And I might then describe, right, first of all, wood pigeons. And because I've labelled it wood pigeons, we know now those funny little sketches are wood pigeons. Funny how that happens, isn't it? And now we can go in and describe. So I'm seeing mutual preening. And then the male feeds female. And there you can see it on screen. And again, I put that little picture of one of the pigeons with a big twig it's carrying away. They can be quite amusing to watch when they are attempting to build a nest. They're not the best nest builders, it has to be said, but they do try. So again, just having that sort of slightly comedic moment of I've got this big twig. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit it into the area I want it, but there we go. I did watch one of these pigeons for about 10 minutes trying to get a rather large twig into um group of sort of um very closely cypress sort of type trees. And it had many attempts before it actually managed to get the huge twig in where it wanted it. It's just too big. So we can make these a little bit funny if you wanted to. Put a thought bubble. What is that pigeon thinking? I don't know. What should we write in there? This will impress her. Best twig ever. I'm sure you've got your own options. What is that pigeon thinking? Wouldn't I like to know? Right. Let's I've got a few more little clips here. You can see some of the hopping in this lower video. There we go. He didn't do any of the bowing though, just the feeding. I was looking through my videos and trying to find one with the bowing, but I didn't manage to find one. So that is something to record this time, this spring. Try and get a pigeon doing the bowing because it's quite funny. It looks like he's trying to be a gentleman. Oh yes, this was the love triangle with another male trying to butt the way in. So what's going on here? There we go. So hopefully that has been a little bit enlightening on our common wood pigeon, which I'm sure you see all the time if you're in the UK, and probably have never really paid much attention to. But they can be interesting to watch. And again, some of the moments between them do appear reasonably tender. Again, that's our human perspective applied to birds, which maybe we shouldn't do, but there we go. So as I said, different ways of recording bird behavior you're seeing. You can do the little sketches, you can do the thought bubbles, and maybe even if you're recording a bird that's making a particular sound, put a little speech bubble and try and mimic the sound that you're hearing. You can make yourself a little comic strip of sequence of events, and of course you can write the narrative of what you're seeing as well. Okay, so let's have a little look. It's still going. Let's have a little look at some more birds, and whoops, there we go. What you're possibly likely to see. So this is the great tit, member of the tittle chickadee family, and again, this is a bird that nests inside a cavity. So this is one that you're going to see attracted to bird boxes, as it is here. It's sort of had a look in, it's just turned around thinking, is this a good area to possibly build a nest in that top picture. So when you're drawing birds, have a think about starting off with a egg shape for the body, and then a rounded shape for the head. I quite often then try to put a bit of angle on that head. So use a few straighter lines to place that in. Getting in a line where the middle of the beak is going to go is going to give you the direction the bird's looking. And also if you draw that line into the middle of the head, it will also give you a line that you can place the eye on top of. So the eye, when you're looking at your generally your garden birds, the perching type birds, you're going to see that the eye is positioned just on the line above the center of the beak. Going to put the beak shape in there. I drew the line further than I needed it to go, so that little working line can be rubbed out afterwards. And then I have a little head shape going on already. From that sort of middle of beak line, I'm actually going to use that to draw in the white cheek marking. Back here, we've got crossed over wings. So I'm going to bring in a little sort of soft triangle shape here, and then I'm going to bring another little wingtip through on the other side. Let's make that a little bit longer. Already disappears up behind here and then continues down through with the tail underneath. I think I've made that a bit long. Getting carried away. Okay, so then we've got the leg as you can see a teeny little bit of thigh up here. So I'm just going to do a little sort of U shape of the yellow, and then the lower leg coming through and the thingy on to the whole of the bird box. And the leg on the other side is just appearing around the side as well. A tip is to draw the legs of your bird before you draw whatever it is perched on. So you make the bird look right and then draw the background to suit. And again, just to identify our bird, if I shade in the head, you can hatch as well. So if you prefer to hatch with some straight lines rather than shading, that's fine. So we've got a nice black marking. And there's a little white wing bar I want to make note of. Also front, just a very light line for where it changes colour. And what I'm not going to do is draw all of the feathers this time. So rather than going into huge amounts of detail, just want to get a quick sketch of the sort of character of the bird. And if you want to bring some color into your sketch, then just have a look. Where is it a little bit more sort of greeny? And then where is it sort of more bluey grey as we go down? And of course, we want a bright yellow underneath. So I'm starting with blue and then I'll put some grey over. If you are drawing a bird that has white edges to the wings and you want to put in a little bit more detail, again, what you could do is when you've put in the dark sort of base color, is to come back over with these sort of jelly roll type pens and draw in the white edges with that. It's always an option. I'm not going to this time because they're not that prominent, but it is something that you could have a think about doing. So we just put a little indication of the bird house, the front of it in here. So this is a bird looking for, in this case, a man-made structure for a nest. You will also find the great tits and blue tits or nesting in natural crevices, so inside tree trunks or stumps as well. Other birds will have different nesting preferences. And the next slide. So, should I put this in or not? It always makes me laugh. This is my gutter robin. No. So this is a European robin, and 2 years in a row, it decided to make a nest in the gutter. As you can see, it's above the downpipe, so they didn't get washed away. They were absolutely fine. 3 chicks sort of fledged first year, 4 chicks fledged the next year. So obviously they did very well in the gutter. So you might find they are one of the birds that are notorious for finding very odd places to nest sometimes. So that you might find either robins or wrens nesting somewhere a little bit odd. Where they have the opportunity, they will take it. Again, if you are seeing a bird flying around with something in its beak, food of some description in its beak, so in this case I think there were caterpillars, worms and spiders being taken in, have a look. Where does it go? If you can carefully watch without disturbing the bird, that's important. Whereabouts it's flying, you may get an idea of where it's made its nest. Again, don't disturb the birds. Be careful about looking at nesting birds. But if you are watching, and in this case, I couldn't help but watch because it was literally outside the back door, then you can sort of have an idea of where what sort of nests the bird's making, and listening as well. Can you hear a lot of baby birds cheeping? That will give you a clue. So going back to those great tits, if I stood anywhere near the box, I could hear them all inside cheeping away. um, they were actually much noisier than the robins. So have a look for clues as to what your feathered friends are getting up to in springtime, and when are they making a nest. I've noticed a huge difference in timing between when the robin made this nest in the gutter over the 2 years. Um, so that was quite interesting as well. So when are they making a nest? Do they have more than one brood in the year? And are they using different nesting sites for each of those? Um, Anything else you notice? Jot it down in your nature journal. It's all interesting. And the more you look, the more you observe, the more you will discover, and the more questions we will also come up with. Okay, so if you're drawing the funny little robins, I'll give you a few more minutes to finish off, and then we have one last slide to have a look at. Should tell you the story of how I got the bottom photograph because it's quite funny. So I had to do it remotely because the robin knew that I was watching. So I left the camera on a tripod. And it seemed to know that the camera was something weird. So I put my coat over it. So I left the camera there with a green coat over it, and I said, "This is a tree. This is the new tree in the garden." And Robin just sort of went, "Yeah, right." I just left it there for a long time, and eventually it sort of got used to this new tree in the garden and just carried on with its business. But yes, it was a bit funny. It didn't mind us going in and out of the door at all. It's just but as soon as I got the camera out, it knew. Anyway, let's have a look at that last slide. So, um, other things to notice in spring. Have a look at the animals and what they are doing. So mammals may be a little bit more tricky to view here in the UK, but then we've also got our amphibians. So if you happen to have a pond nearby that you can visit, you may notice toad or frog spawn. You may notice newts who will be laying their eggs in the spring as well. And the male newts do change quite drastically in the spring. So this is a picture of a great crested newt. And it looks quite different to how it looks other times of the year. It grows this large crest along its back and also changes color quite a bit. So this is something that you will notice with all the different species of newt, is that they will have sort of a springtime look to them to impress the females. So that is something interesting to have a look for. In terms of mammals, some of our mammals will be thinking about coming out of hibernation shortly. So hedgehogs, dormice, and bats all hibernate during the winter. And as it starts to get warmer, you might start to notice them appearing and going about their business very hungry after a long winter. In March, of course, we have the hares doing their little boxing matches with which is actually the females telling the males to get lost. But they they are quite interesting to watch as well if you have the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to do a very quick little sketch of our hedgehog, uh, Mrs. Tiggywinkle down here. And again, I'm going to start off with an oval for the body shape and then a long, slightly triangular head going down to a reasonably large nose. So hedgehogs are nocturnal. They do tend to get around more with their nose than their eyes. So then notice how large the nose is in comparison to the small beady eyes. And if you look at the distance between nose to eye and eye to ear, they should be, the two distances should be about the same. So from nose to the middle of eye to the front of the ear. If you make those distances around about the same, you should get your head of your hedgehog nicely proportioned. Little paws. Again, have a look at the space between the paws and the gaps that you want to leave are as important as the legs themselves. So in order to get them spaced apart correctly, have a look at how much space you're leaving. And this hedgehog is going at quite a pace. They don't always go quite as fast, but we can see the legs are made that too big. The legs are quite wide apart, so it's traveling rather quickly. So again, I'm just going to put some dashes underneath for the fur, and then some short little dashes for the spines above. And the edge of the tips of each of the spine are actually lighter colored. So another way again to get that effect is to shade in dark first and then put the lighter color in the dashes over the top. But just for a little pencil sketch, we'll have a go at just doing it this way for now. And again, if you wanted a little bit more time to pause and have a go at drawing the great crested newt as well, feel free to come back to it at a later point. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session. Hopefully that has been a nice quick run through some of the signs of spring and some various ways of recording those, as well as just looking at the variety of what might be occurring in your area. So as always, I've got a few useful links that again you can have a look at, follow through to find some more information if you want to. So hope that you have enjoyed the session, and as always, we will have another creative nature journaling session next month. If you've got a idea for any upcoming sessions, I haven't scheduled the subjects yet, so feel free to have your say. If you want to give me some ideas, then you can contact me after the session. You can also, if you haven't done yet, join the Facebook group Painting and Drawing with Bethany, and feel free to share your sketches there and just come for some arty advice and chat. So hope that you've enjoyed yourself, and see you again at another session soon. Bye bye.